Hello, this is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and sorry about the delay. I had a issue going on with my Wi-Fi, and actually, I guess I had one kind of all morning, but I had, like, my sister was working on something, so I didn't restart it. So I was on my Wi-Fi, so it went out for a second, my hotspot, and so she stopped me because then her stuff got messed up. And then it was a good thing she stopped me because I was about to go live on my hotspot. Just mess up all my data. But that actually has happened before accidentally. So happy little accidents there. But so again, I apologize for the delay. Today we're going to be talking about this tragic story about a GOP Black City Councilwoman who won in an upset in a city council race. She was murdered. And so it looks like she was deliberately targeted, but the motive they don't know. So we'll have to continue observing that story to see if there was any. I don't know if that there's any political motivation. I mean, T-Post Millennial, they didn't report like it was like a political assassination, but some people like kind of suggested it on Twitter. That from what we know, I think the police aren't saying at least that was a sort of motive, but very tragic story. Also want to talk about this article from the Bulwark, which Bill Kristol's news site that they started like in 2018. They're like, we're above party and blah, blah, blah. But, a lot of them are never Trumpers, which is fine if you. Well, actually, no, it's not fine how long they've been never Trumpers because their opinions have morphed. And now many of them, like Bill, have taken positions that are just not conservative positions because it seems like they have a grift now and they want to be the responsible sort of high and mighty sort of conservative Republican that's highbrow and mightier than all these other ones coming in. But there's positions I've seen him take. I'm like, bro, that's not like beyond Trump. Like that's not even like a conservative position anymore. Like, what are you doing? So they had a guest writer write about the trans issue, and they're saying that they want to take a moderate approach. And it's a response to the National Review writing articles saying, no, we can't sacrifice truth. So I wanted to go through it and talk about it today. Especially as they're responding to Trump. He came out earlier this week with a hot video saying, if I win, when I win the presidency, we're going to, say there's only two genders. We're not paid for any surgery and we're going to undo Biden stuff. And so he came out very, very strong on that issue. So we're going to talk about the article and run through it. And I don't personally, and I think if you've been following me for a while, I don't think there is a moderate position on it because it's really about objective truth. And you can't change how someone else feels in their head. You can try to help them cope with reality. But it's come to a position where they want everyone else to reject our observable, grounded sort of reality to conform to everyone else's objective truth. And I've written about this before and I've talked about it a lot. So I'm on the side of, what the sentiments with the National Review is. So I want to go through this article and also briefly talk about or show you have a little video of this Chinese, balloon just floating over in the U.S. And I'm like, is Biden gonna do anything about that? So before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos. I do want to thank people when they do send messages and other things like that. I'm really busy because doing my own stuff, doing black tea, by myself pretty much. And that's not pretty much. I am doing black tea, but I do, try to look at messages, and I don't know, I always respond in a speedy manner as quick as I would like to. But I did get a nice message the other night that I really appreciated. And so I didn't get a chance to really read through the reply because I replied to them and then they answered back. So just, I do want to thank you when you guys reach out. I'm sorry if I can't always respond as, like I said, as quickly as I like. Now, if you're a troll out there and you leave me a response, I'm likely to blow you up and embarrass you. I can. So just fair warning. If you send me something, a nasty message, I will probably reply, or maybe I won't reply, because you can't always give the trolls attention when they look for attention. But if I can make content out of you, I'm probably going to make content out of you. And I've done it plenty of times. So just FYI, when trolls come for me, I will clap back. But I do appreciate people reaching out who, like what I'm doing and encourage me to continue what I'm doing. So I don't do it for affirmation, but I do appreciate you. You can go to blacktnews.com, check out different content, different articles on my website, different videos. Please make sure that you guys check out different merchandise that I have on the website. Like, for example, This Be Better Not Better. I got different books you guys can check out, like Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear, which I wish people had read during the pandemic, because, man, people were annoying in 2020 and 2021 and even 2022 and still in 2023. If you watch, someone posted a picture, I think it was like maybe Colbert's audience, and everybody had masks on. I'm like, we're still doing this, brah? We're still doing this? Which plenty of places still demand that you wear a mask. I went to Detroit city council meeting to talk about Prop 3, and they made you wear a mask when you come into the building. And so if you don't have one, they will give you one of those masks that come in a box that say, will not protect you from COVID. That's what they hand you and make you wear. So I had one on. And so when my video was making the rounds, they're like, she's in a mask. I'm like, that was not and I couldn't help that. I think it's stupid. I let them know that it was stupid, but I also wanted to get in the building so I could say my piece. So it is what it is. So people do still make you wear the mask. So anyway, please check out different content that I have on my website. Here's a picture with me and a lot of my books. I'm very blurry. Very blurry. Give me 1 second. My Wi-Fi. Checking out my Wi-Fi. Give me 1 second. It's the right one. My sister's trying to be producer over here, all covert. Brenda came downstairs and told me that I was blurry. I'm not sure what's exactly wrong with the Wi-Fi, but oh no, well now I have to tell you why I'm laughing. she like crawled down on the carpet to hand me a note, and now her sweater is stuck on a nail. So I don't know if you guys can hear her laughing in the background now. But she's now part of the show. Anyway, continue to go on. By the way, my new book is available on pre-order for Kindle. Of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. It's not available for paperback yet, but if you're interested, you can go ahead and sign up at the website to make sure you guys get updates so you know what's going on. And I got plenty of other books as well, so please check that stuff out. And also, if you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It helps with my overhead, it costs to stream, run my website, all that good stuff. So I think the bar, appears to be more bars now. If I look blurry to you, please let me know in the comments. She's told me that I did, but I'm trying to fix it as I go through everything. But if you would like to help, you can. I appreciate you. Uh, and I do want to also, at least one last time for this week, thank the sponsors who helped me go to Right for Life. I mean, the March for Life. Brighton Michigan PAC, Michigan Conservative Coalition, and Plymouth Right to Life were my gold sponsors. And I also have my silver sponsors, Matt and Lisa Donater and Lana Manjapalian. I don't know, her last name is really hard to pronounce, but they are good friends of mine. She's a little feisty Italian woman. She always is asking me to run for something. I'm doing the black tea though, but I had a great time. And as you guys know, you guys can go on YouTube and check out different interviews that I had with people. And I also went to the Students for Life Summit, and they had a lot of great content that I got from folks there. A lot of people at March for Life were really, really religious, which everyone was pretty much religious, but a lot of people were like, this is my beliefs, etc. And I respect that, but I do think people need to go a little deeper into their explanations of stuff, which is one of the reasons that I wrote, of course, God is blatantly against abortion, to help convey those beliefs in a way that secular people can understand too. So it's not just debunking dumb things that secular people say of their misunderstanding of the Bible, but also to help Christians and religious people convey their beliefs in a way that makes sense in the world. To explain it further, Dennis Prager, he said something that's fascinating. He doesn't bother convincing people that God is real. He convinced people of the need for God. So explaining why we need objective morality, why life is intrinsically valuable, or why we at least need to pretend or act like it is. Because Christians don't always act as if every life is intrinsically valuable. We get caught up in our own stuff. You know, we don't always pray for our neighbor or think about the next door neighbor and stuff, but it is like a commandment to care for your neighbor. And so I make the point, like, if it was easy, it wouldn't need to be a commandment. So it is in our best interest to at least act as though everyone's life is valuable, at least to the point where we don't go around killing each other. So those are a couple things that are in the book, but there were so many great resources that of people who had like booths at the Students for Life Summit, who helped women in need, in crisis. And not every, I think probably every group was probably religious, but some groups said, you know, our organization is not religious. And they made a point to say that because some people are turned off when they hear that there's a religious push in the institutions, but so many people come for pro-life people and say, oh, you're only pro-birth, you don't care about people after they're born. And it's just not true. You just have to do more research. There's plenty of resources out there and people who want to help you if you are really in a dire situation. So even if you're not religious, it's good to know that information and know some of these groups and organizations, which you can find resources like Students for Life and Live Action, because people do throw those accusations of pro-life people don't do anything. It's just not true. Pro-life people are very charitable and do things outside of just trying to save, you know, babies and stuff. But that is a noble goal. It's a very noble goal. So anyway, I had a great time, and I want to encourage you guys to at least go look at some of the footage if you haven't seen it. I'll continue posting things. So anyway, let's get to different news of the day. So I don't have a meme, I'm afraid, today, but I just want to quickly show this what's going on with this balloon.
Buddy, I am sitting in my driveway here in Billings, Montana, and right now there is a ground stop on our airport, and this thing is up in the sky. All right, again, for those of you who might think this thing is the moon, there's the thing, and whoa, there's the moon. It's not the moon.
So, yeah, that's a Chinese like spy balloon, and why we don't just shoot things like that down, I don't know. Whether it's China flexing because they know we're not going to do anything. I don't know the purpose. I don't know what the balloon does that a satellite can't do, but it's just weird. And he said Montana, right? That's where we have like a lot of military stuff there. I mean, it's just not good. And people are questioning, why are we just letting them flex like this? So I just wanted you to be aware. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the balloon, but because I don't think we have a lot of answers on our side anyway. But it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. And another thing I'm going to mention, and not go deep into, is that there there is like a lot of farmland that's being bought up by the Chinese as well, and I think that's pretty concerning. Very, very concerning. There's just a lot of people losing farmland from like private, families and stuff. Anyway, there's a lot of like corporate people buying farms, and I don't want to get deep into like, I guess I don't have a deep conspiracy about it or anything like that, but it's just, one day it looks like we can go in some pretty dark territory with all like these corporations and foreign entities buying our space and our food source. I don't imagine that people are ultimately going to do good things with those resources. So just wanted to freak you out a little bit for today. Let's go into this story about the Bulwark. So if you did not see, Trump came out hot earlier this week in regards to transgender issues. So I'm going to play like a little snippet. If you haven't seen it, you can go ahead and watch it on True Social, or people reposted it on Twitter and other places.
As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique. I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth.
So, he said a lot of base stuff, man. Some people who were like annoyed with Trump are kind of like, you may win me over, old man. And so, the thing about Trump is that he can get engaged in stuff, and then all of a sudden he can say something that people might agree with, but he's so polarizing that all of a sudden people are like, nah, I'm against this. And a good example of that would be like the NFL kneeling stuff. Like, most people felt like it overall, like, that's weird. Why? Like, it's dumb. Why would you kneel? But Trump saying something that automatically like kind of polarized the country into like a 50-50% kind of scenario. So, it's just how things are with him. So, I don't expect him jumping in and saying stuff will make people be like, yeah, you know what, he's totally right. I think it'll kind of continue to inflame the conversation, but it is what it is. But there's different think pieces, and have been different think pieces, and the Bulwark decided to come and have their say on the issue, and they had a guest speaker on it, and who is trans. So if your name was Giselle, I got a picture of Giselle. I'll show you in a minute. So Giselle Donnelly, born Thomas, he is the author of their guest column regarding this issue. So I'm going to go through the article really quickly. We're trying to do it quickly, but I'm sure with commentary it won't be so super quickly. But yeah, they decided to write this, I guess, in response to some of the National Review articles coming out and talking about this issue. What I mean, everybody's talking about it, I suppose. So Trump's escalation in the gender war, even as the former president tries to energize his tired campaign by pushing on trans issues, is a window opening for a moderate approach. 2 months ago, into the lackluster start of his 2024 presidential bid, Donald Trump rolled out the most reliable weapon in the MAGA arsenal, a full-scale attack on transgender Americans and the medical and therapeutic communities that care for them. When this paragraph started, I thought they were saying when Trump rolled out his most reliable weapon, I thought they were going to say build the wall or border security or whatever, because that's, you know, where he got his start from. And but no, they're going trans. In a 3.5-minute video, screened, I think it's supposed to be screened, first posted on his Truth Social platform, Trump announced an onslaught of gender war measures going far beyond the question raised in recent years about bathroom use, trans participation in women's sports, or the prescription of puberty blockers or hormones for adolescents. On day one, vowed Trump, I will revoke Joe Biden's policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. Which, by the way, Joe Biden they've issued some crazy stuff about the transgender issues. They have put out a document about gender-affirming care. I've showed it many times. I don't know how blurry my connection is right now, so I don't know how well you guys can see this. But this is something that, you know, his administration put out about gender-affirming care in young people. And they talk about affirming care and what is it. So there's social affirmation, which is, you know, doing different hairstyles, clothing, changing your name, gender pronouns, and restrooms and other facilities. So giving access to a trans person to have this is how you affirm them. And they push affirmation. So this is what the administration is pushing. Like, if you are a man and you want to use a female's bathroom, we affirm them. You can go in the women's bathroom. Like that is their position. And there's puberty blockers. That's when you're taking different hormones and stuff to block your development. They claim that it's reversible. There's hormone therapy, which I would not say is the case, but hormone therapy, testosterone hormones for those who were assigned female at birth, and estrogen hormones for those who were assigned male at birth, early adolescence, partially reversible. And then they go into gender affirming surgeries. Top surgery, you know, that's when they, you know, chop off your healthy breasts, and bottom surgery when they chop off your genitals, and facial feminization. So that's what Dylan Mulvaney did recently when he, you know, smoothed out his bones, you know, to get a smoother, more softer sort of face. So, and this is typically used in adulthood or case-by-case adolescence and not reversible. So that's something that our White House put out, our government put out. And Biden talks about we need to give people gender-affirming care. Our, you know, assistant health secretary is a trans person. It says we need to give gender-affirming care. And it's important that these people get gender-affirming care. And Biden even was like, this is how you show love, to give gender-affirming care. So that's where we're at as a society. And that's unfortunate. So when Trump's saying on day one they're going to revoke his policies about gender-affirming care, I'm like, okay, that sounds good. Article says, on the right, gender-affirming care has become synonymous with premature prescriptions of cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, and surgeries. In reality, it is the common language phrase that marks a kinder, gentler approach to what is known as gender dysphoria, referring to clinically significant distress or impairment related to feelings of gender incongruence, as opposed to previous treatments for gender identity disorder, a now obsolete term that held the gender incongruence itself to be the disorder. Trump announced he would ask Congress to pass legislation that recognizes only two genders, male and female, and that they are assigned at birth. Which I think assigned at birth is a dumb phrase. I mean, that's not what you're assigned. I mean, you are, like, at conception, like, you have a your sex is female, male. That's determined. You don't find out till later into pregnancy, and you can tell by that. You know, you look at the sonogram and see the babies. You know, or you do. Well, I guess they just normally do that by the ultrasound, but they can tell by the genitalia. I mean, maybe if the baby moved. I don't know how often people make mistakes about that, about the baby's sex. They used to be wrong about that, I think, more often. But I wouldn't say that's not something you can assign. So I don't like that phrasing, but I get what they mean. And I guess it's a pushback with the people who say, "Oh, you may be assigned this gender or sex at birth, but that's not what you really are." So I understand like a pushback on the language, but I just want to point out that I don't actually like that phrase. He vowed that he would sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age, and to ask Congress to outlaw the use of federal funds to pay for transition procedures. So I'm waiting to hear the crazy thing. The Department of Justice would be commandeered for the anti-trans effort. Trump's promised a private right of action for victims due to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minors. Thus, a detransitioner might decide years or even decades after transitioning to take doctors, presumably other caregivers, to court for damages. Trump would also order an investigation of Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up the horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, or colluded to market hormones or puberty blockers that are in no way approved for this use. I'm still waiting for the big bad shoe to drop. This sounds, good to me, but maybe people are like, because you're far right. I just, we're behind some other countries. Maybe they've been just doing more kind of radical stuff longer, and they're, drawing back a bit on this, but we are, whatever our culture going on with our culture, there's folks really, really pushing this. I've played videos on here of doctors talking about how they introduce this into hospitals because it is a lucrative business. They make you big pharma slaves for life when you get on this stuff. It's one thing after another. They tell you to take the puberty blockers, and they tell you to take the hormones, and they tell you to take out, your reproductive organs. It's a continuous cycle. Then it preys on your body, and you have to take all other kinds of drugs. Like, you're continuously having to go back to the hospital. So we can't pretend like there's not financial incentive. It's terrible to think that there are doctors who would do that and treat their patients like that. But in Canada, there's doctors suggesting people be euthanized over medical bills and other stuff like that. So we are not a culture that is dedicated to really taking care of people and having them even live. People kill babies for cash. So is it crazy that there'd be doctors who would butcher women and kids and children and whoever if they're willing to do that and sign a form when they're making all kinds of money? There's doctors on TikTok, which one got in trouble, but with huge followings that show off double mastectomies and other stuff like that. Like, so it's not crazy to think that there are doctors taking advantage of these people, and to have this mentality that we can't have any sort of conversion therapy. And I don't mean like electroshock therapy or something like that. I just mean like someone goes to their therapist and they try to unwind some of this stuff, and they don't want to do it. They don't want you to even be able to do that in Canada. And in the Obama administration, which Biden was there at the time, they were trying to stop any sort of conversion therapy too. There's I don't remember what group it was, but there's a group like came against it and was talking about how they're against conversion, them trying to stop it because, they did have changes themselves. So it's not people go to therapy to work out their issues. So a patient coming to you and you just affirming their feelings rather than working it out and seeing if there's some kind of explanation that explains their dysphoria, that's not even therapy. Like, so we're not in a good spot as a society. So for some people just to be like, oh, doctors wouldn't do that, or my grandma used to call doctors butchers. Now She obviously didn't like going to the hospital because she was, in her older age, she got sick quite a bit, and they had to do different stuff. So she didn't like going there. And I think older people just, um, would use that kind of terminology anyway. But so they're practicing medicine anyway. But some of these people, they want to make money. They want to make money, and then some people are deep in their ideology. So I'm not going to say that it's all about money for people, but if you're blinded by your ideology and you see through that lens instead of looking at someone and saying, is there a good explanation to why this woman is, is identifying in this way? Is there another way to treat her dysphoria rather than me going this extra mile and chopping off her breasts or giving her testosterone and other stuff? Like there's one detransitioner that I follow who's a singer, and I've talked about her before, but she ended up she said basically her transitioning what came down to internalized misogyny and some other things. But when she decided to detransition, when she basically like hit a wall of biology, like it just kind of smacked her in her face. But one thing that made her really, really scared was she was trying to reach a high note that she would normally be able to get with ease, and she couldn't anymore. And that freaked her out. And as a singer myself, that's something I can't relate to her dysphoria, but that's something that would have, like, I get that. And so people in the comments were like, didn't you know that hormones would change your voice like that? And they're like, it's one thing to be told that. It's another thing to let that process. So this thing that is her, that she does, that really defines her, is at risk of being altered forever with these drugs. So sometimes people, they're so sure that they want something and they're wrong. And we should know that people make mistakes, especially kids. People saying that kids know for sure and could decide their gender and would be fine if they took hormones and all this. You're crazy. You know that kids are wrong all the time. Adults make mistakes all the time. So to alter their body in such a way is insane. And there's so many people who've grown up and they're like, I'm so glad that I was able to live my life as a tomboy and not live in today's times, because people be trying to convince you that you're a boy. So yeah, I think it's a good thing, people being able to go back and sue some of these doctors who may have, been not really trying to treat them or what caused the dysphoria, but just trying to just do things at the patient's command. So if this is something that's like someone going to the doctor cosmetically to do something to their nose or something is I wouldn't do all that stuff myself, but people doing that and there's people who with issues who do all that stuff as well, like people addicted to plastic surgery. But you go into a plastic surgeon to make those kind of changes is one thing. You going to like a therapist and folks who are like specializing in this field and they think they're treating you, like instead of really getting to the root of your dysphoria. Why? We need to ask questions and see if they really did the right thing, and if they were trying to do the right thing, or were they just doing something that was part of their ideology. And people will always pull up statistics and resources that can prove their point, their side of the aisle. But a lot of those sources will be biased and etc. Like, we need to pump the brakes on a lot of this stuff. We really, really do. So I don't have an issue with anything that this article has brought up. I'm going to keep reading. This is misleading language about Lupron, the most commonly used puberty blocking drug. It was approved by the Food and Drug Administration in the 1980s for treatment of the precocious puberty, but not for gender dysphoria, a diagnosis that had not by that point come into widespread use. In recent years, questions have been raised about potential long-term side effects of puberty blockers. They are not intended as a long-term treatment or a generally regarded by the medical community as a relatively safe part of gender care for adolescents. Lupron is a drug they would give to prisoners to chemically castrate them. So when Matt Walsh and other people refer to Lupron as a chemical castration drug, they mean it. So to give it to kids to block their puberty, I think that's troubling, guys. I think it's troubling. Throughout the video, Trump was dog whistling furiously to rile up his traditional base. What? Now, why are they so addicted to calling it dog whistling? I think it was pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious what his stance was in the video. So why is it dog whistling? They just like to use that word because they've used it so many times. They don't know how to let it go. Like, it's obvious what he's telling you. What do you think he's dog whistling? Like, no, everyone can hear loud and clear. You don't need to be a dog to pick that up, or just a MAGA person. It's very, like, and they don't go into what he's dog whistling about. No, we understand. And as I said, like, yeah, a lot of the stuff sounds really good. While curbing transgender ideology has become a central tenet of the MAGA and MAGA adjacent right in the recent years, even National Review averages several articles per week dunking on the excesses of gender advocacy. Trump is, as his wont, recklessly disregarding what have heretofore been the limits of debate. Gone is the "we're just trying to protect kids and save women's sports" facade, replaced by the naked efforts to prevent transition for all, regardless of age, and attacks on the therapeutic and medical systems that have improved the process and made it available for more patients. The agenda is equal parts fear and loathing. So there's plenty of people who are like, we want to save the kids from going through the surgery. They're young women who transition. They're adults when they make the decision, but they still are young, figuring themselves out. They did not get a lot of pushback. Like, I've heard detransitioners say they called Planned Parenthood for hormones and got prescription in like 30 minutes. So they've gone to they went to therapy. They didn't push back to really figure out what was the cause of the gender dysphoria. And there was one woman on 60 Minutes talking about how she went through deciding that she was trans, getting hormones, chopping off her breasts, deciding that she wasn't actually trans, and all that happened within the span of a year. So, and you can say, well, they're adults, they made those mistakes. But is there an industry that is preying on people and their different mental, for lack of a better word, I'll just say mental issues, whether it's anxiety or other sorts of, it could be depression or all different sorts of things. Instead of getting to the root of whatever's causing the dysphoria, are they just trying to push this ideology to keep transforming our world, to make bank, whatever it is? So it's not just kids who are harmed. So I do think it's worthy of conversations, because unfortunately adults are being dragged into this as well. And you can say, well, that's their fault. They're adults. They can make their own decisions. I don't think we would treat every sort of predatory industry the same and just be like, oh, they're adults, you know? Like, if there's predatory lenders, people aren't just, I mean, there's people who are predatory lenders who are allowed to exist, but people still send off alarm bells all the time and try to like regulate stuff, you know? So there are people who are trans who are like, leave the kids alone. Like, that's something that you need to really be sure about when you're older. So there are people who genuinely want to protect the trans kids and genuinely want to save women's sports. And they'll want to save other things as well, especially if beauty pageants are taken over by, you know, trans women and other stuff like that. So yes, people are concerned across the board about these things. It's not a facade, but there is a bigger sort of truth out there that conservatives are fighting as well. And you'll see people like in the Daily Wire and I guess myself and other folks make the argument that it's not just about the transgender issues. It's also about what is truth, what is objective reality, and why are so many people trying to just rip it away? Like, if you are a man, you were born a man, you will die a man. When they look at your carcass and look at your bones, they'll be like, yep, that was a man. It's what it is. But people say no, if they womanhood is a vibe, as Macy Gray was bullied into saying, that doesn't make any sense. And then they'll say, yes, it does. You just have a high school understanding of biology. You can have a toddler understanding of biology and understand that men are men and women are women. Like, you have to be, a high, amount of indoctrination, I guess, to be re-educated. Yes, I have not been re-educated. I'm not susceptible to that sort of re-education to alter my perception of reality to accept something that's not true. Yeah, sometimes I'd be questioned, like, why don't you just, be kind and affirm someone and use their pronoun? Because you're asking me to lie. And I think that's immoral. Not just asking, you're demanding that I do it. There's a great TikTok video of a man talking about when people bring up pronouns, they're saying, oh, this is just how I want to be addressed. And they're like, that's not true. If I'm having a conversation with you, I'm not going to really slip in she and he while I'm talking directly to you. They're second person pronouns. What you really want is if I'm somewhere else and we're talking about you, that I use your proper pronouns. Because that's, when it might come up when we're talking about you in like third person or something like that. And he's like, you're trying to control how I think about you and how I address you in other situations. And that I can't abide by. And I'm like, really good point. Really good point. So it is a battle beyond the women's sports. It is a battle beyond the bathrooms. It is, and those things are important. They're important to me as a young woman in high school. I was someone who would change in the bathroom. Like, I would not like do it out in the open with other girls. I would, as I got older in the gym, like, a little more confident, it was fine. But I definitely would not have been okay with a boy in my locker room. I wouldn't have been okay with that. So my heart goes out to young women who have to deal with something that I wouldn't imagine having to deal with as a kid in high school or middle school or wherever. My heart goes out to those women. And people who have to go to the YMCA and risk seeing a penis in their locker room or a spa and seeing a penis in the locker room or something. Like, this is an issue. I don't expect to ever go to prison, but I don't want men there in my prison. So these are important things we got to talk about because they're now becoming, things that are up in legislation. Things that are affecting real world situations. But beyond those things that are worth talking about and addressing, there is a greater narrative about what is truth and why do so many people demand that we throw it out of the window. Now, I've had this conversation a lot, and I think a lot of it has to do with, the author of this article is alleging that people on the right are just doing it out of loathing. They said the agenda is equal parts fear and loathing. Okay? And it's not fear. Maybe some people are afraid. I have a reasonable concern. And I think we all should be reasonably concerned. But not loathing. Like, I hate what they're doing. I don't hate these people. Like, I have sympathy for a lot of these, for people who, it would be terrible to live your life feeling so disconnected from your body. That would be awful. But that doesn't mean that what they're all pushing is the right way to treat these individuals. And it seems like they're not open to really the possibility that they're wrong. So there's that. But the greater thing is, what is truth and why are you fighting so hard against it and want everyone to push the lie, to push a societal lie in the name of kindness? And I don't think people on the left genuinely, like the political structure, care about trans people. And I think people on an individual level, yeah, they do. They want to always pick another, by the way, and protect that other, but they want to use that other. Whether it's Black people, Hispanics, gays, but now it's the T is like the most important thing right now. Like, there's always a hierarchy of power as far as how much privilege or lack of privilege you have. So using the LGBT community is a good way to dunk on their enemies. And a lot of their enemies, particularly people on the right, particularly right-wing evangelicals will say, who have a lot of voting power, are like, I'm not going along with that. But if they keep legislating stuff, getting court things done where they have to come against you because you're coming up ahead, if they come out on top, they have a lot of power to start limiting their enemies. So a lot of it has to do with gaining political power. I don't think a lot of it has to actually do with compassion for their enemies. I don't. I just don't. But I think they also want to weed out people who will not oppose them. And I think this is a good way to test, like an ink blot test, to see who's willing to fight them and who's willing to bend the knee and just go along to get along. And if you're willing to say, hey, I totally see that person is a man, but I'm willing to say that's a woman, they can know, they can be I don't even say reason with, controlled. They can be controlled, especially if we're going to use language like you're a nasty, homophobic, transphobic bigot. You're not kind if you don't go along with what we say. They know to a degree that they can control you. So I think they're trying to weed out who are the people that will oppose them, who will stand up to them, especially, I think a big example, I keep mentioning Macy Gray. She said, I don't care what you say, a man is a man, isn't a woman. And she got berated online. And then she was on doing an interview. It was either Good Morning America or something like that. I don't remember which show it was. And the interview was such cringe. Now, this isn't the internet anymore. It was, it was a news person doing an interview. And Macy Gray wants to talk about music. And now she has to talk about this topic. She was on Piers Morgan's show when she mentioned the transgender thing. And so they kept pulling her teeth until she would backtrack what she said. This is an internet troll. Like, she's on a big network being interviewed about her music, and now she didn't have to, but they would not it seemed like they would not have let her leave. Maybe she was chained to the floor. I don't know. But it seemed like they would not let her be done with that interview until she had been like, well, I didn't know any better, and womanhood is a vibe. Like, it's not a vibe. It's not a vibe. But that's what she was made to say. So they want to, if you're someone who's not like Macy Gray, they want to make sure that eventually they get you to that place. That's one reason why J.K. Rowling enrages so many people. She has not said anything that should spark as much hatred that people have towards her. Not a single thing. I've been following her so-called anti-trans rhetoric, and there hasn't been any hate espoused. People just don't like that she's like, no, if you're a woman, women have particular experiences, our biology and our function. Like, there's certain things that we go through as women. Everyone can empathize and experience the world and maybe have similar experiences. But as a woman, I've had certain experiences as a woman, and you can't just be a man. And I'm concerned about men being in women's spaces and like things that just totally make sense. But you have people who are like, don't buy that Hogwarts Legacy game. Now, J.K. Rowling, she has a lot of money. She has, and some people are like, well, she has nothing to lose, or she has nothing to get, to really fear because she has so much. But on the flip side, she has no reason why she has to keep speaking on behalf of other women as well. She could just stay silent. But she's chosen to speak out. And she's someone who's made enough money and has such a valuable property in Harry Potter that you can't just like throw her into obscurity. So there's another reason to aim for the stars and make yourself a lot of money, because if you're controlled under someone else's boot, it's easier to X you out, I suppose. But she's able to continuously keep speaking up for women and womanhood, and people hate her. Really, 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 really hate her. There's someone who's having people send their Harry Potter books to them so they can blot out her name. That's crazy. You know who wrote the book. But they're willing to do that, and I don't know how many people actually send their books to them to get rid of her name. She means no disdain toward people who are trans. I've not seen a single thing from J.K. Not maybe you can send me something and I missed it, but I've not seen this. I've been following. I've not seen a single thing that was hateful. It was just like, this is how things are. We can't just ignore the world. And there's some harm from pushing this ideology, and she's hated. The hatred against Abigail Shrier is crazy. Someone who is just kind of observing the facts, and in a compassionate way, in my opinion, people despise her. She even did a speech. She said the number one thing that people ask her is, how does it feel to be so hated? They want to know who they can push over, knock to the ground, and beat into submission. And I'm not going to be one of those people that you can knock over to the ground. I'm not going to be one of those people. And I'd encourage you not to be one of those people. I don't think people should do the pronoun game. I think that I'm not going to say I think it is harmful. I encourage you to stop playing it. And we all just need to be like, you are what you are. Period. I'm not playing the game. Someone today was under Ben Shapiro's post. I think about this topic maybe, or maybe something else, but they said, well, you guys are always so obsessed with genitals, and I'm like, you like 90% of the time you can just look at someone and hear their voice and stuff and know their sex. You don't need to see their genitals to know their bones. You know, when they die, you can see their bones and know what sex they are. Like, you don't actually need to see someone's genitals, because they try to make it creepy, like Matt Walsh and other folks are just obsessed with genitals when they have these conversations. I'm like, it's not about that. And then they brought up a friend of theirs who gets harassed because she's 5'10" and had chemo and has lost her breast. And so when she goes to the bathroom, people think they're a man. I'm like, that's terrible. But I said 90% of the time, not 100% of the time. I know you have eyes and you read what I said. So that's a terrible situation. But most of the time, even children can look at you and be like, that's a man, that's a woman. Unless you teach them differently. They can suss it out. You know, there's that kid from Kindergarten Cop. Now, he just say boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. But you don't actually have to see the equipment to know what is a boy and what's a girl. Now, kids can get it wrong. Adults can get it wrong. Most of the day, I guess, if you get it wrong now, because someone had a lot of work done. And there's people out here who've had enough surgery or started, you know, hormones or whatever early enough that they'll be convincing. But like 90% of the time, you can know. And by the way, you have surgeries to match the biological reality. So in my opinion, it undercuts the argument about sex and gender being separate, or it's just being something that's how you identify. Because if you need to have these physical altercations, then you realize that there are certain biological markers that make up men and women. And that's why you're having surgery. That's why you're taking hormones, because you're trying to catch up to that reality, and you're chasing the pot of gold at the end of the never-ending rainbow to try to, you know, become what you are not. So anyway, they ended up saying that anti-trans people are obsessed with genitals, and like they're and tried to relate it to religious people. And I don't know if that was like a knock at, like, I don't know, Catholic pedophiles or something. It was a big reach. It was a big reach. I'm like, you guys are very religious because everything is based on your belief, how you believe yourself to be in your head. Like, if you're a man, you believe that you're a woman because of how you feel. Like, It's not reality, but that, and then you demand everyone to conform around your reality. I'm like, that is a very religious belief. Like, just because you don't serve, you know, God on high doesn't mean that you're not religious and you're serving something. You're definitely religious. So I'm not playing the game. I'm not playing the game. So there's a couple paragraphs left with this article. Let me see. Trump asks, I already read that. Whether this ploy is enough to help revitalize Trump's presidential effort is difficult to assess. The Republican bench is deep with aggressive culture warriors, from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Trump's top rival, has until now dominated the lineup. But now that Trump has spoken, what MAGA candidate will want to be seen to be more moderate than he on the transgender issues? There's moderate Republicans who may take a more moderate approach to this because they're moderates. I don't think there would be a MAGA type candidate who will take a more moderate approach than what the stuff that Trump said. I mean, I don't know about like the clip that I played with Trump saying we're going to like teach positive stuff about the nuclear family, which it's just kind of evident that life is better when you have a nuclear family. So I debating whether that should be legislated or kind of forcibly into the curriculum. I would assume that's kind of the only place for debate. But as far as that other stuff, I don't see that not sounding good to a lot of the base. At the same time, there's a moderation window opening for President Biden and the Democrats in general. They can use this as an opportunity to step away from those on the left who have used the trans rights movement as a battering ram in their war against mainstream society, heteronormativity, and the patriarchy, etc., etc. Consider, for example, the response to the omnipresent Chase Strangio, Deputy Director of the Transgender Justice and Staff Attorney at the American Civil Liberties Union and go-to spokesperson for the media on all things trans, when Congress recently passed the Respect for Marriage Act, codifying the right to same-sex marriage. Strangio wrote, "I feel an inexplicable amount of rage witnessing in the Senate likely overcome the filibuster to vote to codify marriage rights for same-sex couples. I find it disappointing how much time and resource went into fighting for inclusion in this deeply flawed and fundamentally violent institution of civil marriage. I believe in many ways the mainstream LGBTQ legal movement caused insignificant harm in further entrenching the institution of marriage as an organizing structure of the U.S. civil society. To the degree that this sort of radicalism has become the face of the movement for preserving citizenship liberties for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and trans Americans, it's hardly a wonder that it provokes an ugly reaction. And the practical effect is most felt by trans people. Same-sex attraction has been, in recent years, normalized in a way that matters of gender identification have not. Given the tiny slice of population that is trans, studies report estimates less than half of 1% of Americans, even allowing for a slight uptick among the young. The two giant participants in the culture warriors are fighting over a very small battlefield. It's hard to escape the impression that the true objective of each side has more to do with destroying the other or with winning votes through fear than with actual trans people. The first side to betray its extremists is the likelier victor, and that should be easier for moderate Democrats than for MAGA Republicans. A reasonable politician could appeal to the broad middle of America that wants to see neither cruelty toward trans people nor the disestablishment of the nuclear family. The actual issues: where should people urinate, how to ensure fair athletic competition, how to square the rights of children and parents, are subject to reasonable negotiation. Outside cases of immediate death or obvious maiming, state interventions in the contravention of broadly accepted medical standards and practices are invidious to individual rights. A moderate approach would not only spare the general populace from the cultural carnage, but improve the lot of transgender people. When I began to transition, it was not that long ago. It seemed possible to hope that at some point that would not be the thing that defined me. I wanted reassimilation into mainstream society, not a revolution against it. I thought that the trans rights movement would take the path charted by the marriage equality movement. The road to normality is now blocked from both left and right, but perhaps a middle way can be cleared. So I think it's interesting that he mentioned the writer, the author, who is trans, brought up that the comparison to gay marriage, because there's a lot of people who just want to be married and left alone. But the political movement is like, no, make the cake, bigot. Like, so there's definitely, as I said, I think the politicians like use the transgender movement to gain political power. I think that was essentially what the move was for the gay community, to use them as a cudgel. I mean, look at the baker in Colorado, you know, who has been to court a few times, but he lost his appeal, by the way. He got, after dealing with didn't want to bake a cake for a gay couple, then it was like he got in trouble for not baking a transition cake. And so he had lost his appeal. So Jack Phillips is still in court. And when you mention him, it's amazing how many people will, because I've brought him up in debates, particularly when they had just had the passage of the latest marriage bill, and there were still so many people who were like, no, if you open a business, then you should, even if it's baking a cake, you have to make the cake. And so, and they're like, you can worship in your church, but you can't do it other places. I'm like, if you're a Christian or somebody, you can't just clock in and clock out. But that's not how it works. That's not how it works. So there's people who still feel like you have to be compelled to do certain things in your business, or you know. So there's a lot of issues with religious liberty that people are dealing with, and as I said, I think a lot of people use the different groups to try to gain power. I'll just use a different example that has nothing to do with like the sexuality stuff. I found out that the Big Soda, they used to they wanted SNAP benefits to pay for pop, because we call it pop. I'm from Michigan. So they wanted SNAP benefits like food stamps and stuff to pay for that. So they would lobby and give money to different ethnicity groups so they would have their back, and they would get people, and they have studies to be like, well, this is a good way for poor people to get a lot of calories, and poor people need food. They need the calorie consumptions. So when people will be like, no, we don't need food stamps to pay for Coca-Cola and other stuff, then you'd have these groups be like, you guys are racist. You guys are racist. You don't want poor black children. You don't want poor Hispanic children to be able to get their calories from Coca-Cola. You're racist. So people use these groups to gain power. I'm not going to say that people on the right don't do that kind of stuff to a degree too, but it's what the left has done for a very long time. I mean, people bring up Lyndon Baines Johnson as a positive on the left because of the civil rights movement and stuff. It's like he was against that stuff until he realized the power and going along with the wave, and famously said, or I guess it's a little contested whether he did say this, but he said other comments that make it seem like he probably said it about I'll have those N-words voting for me for X amount of years, you know, voting Democrat for all those years. So they use these different other groups to gain political power. And I'm not saying that people don't have a heart for Black people, Hispanic people, gay people, trans people to some degree. I'm not saying that people aren't actually into different ideologies and victim mentalities, etc. But a lot of it is to bully and have a cudgel to beat down different political opponents. It's just how it is. People, and not just political opponents, but just to gain power. Period. You know, like the SNAP benefits and the Coke, whatever. They did things to gain power in certain places of influence, because they want more money. They're a corporation. Unfortunately, you can buy scientists. Just keep that in your mind. You can buy different scientists to get them to say what you want. You know, you can buy different groups to get them to back you, to say what they want, so they can use whatever kind of narrative to push their agenda. Just keep that in mind. I think that's the end of the article. So I don't really think there's a middle. As I said, I don't think there's a middle of the road for this. I mean, I guess more middle would be like, should trans people be able to compete in sports? Or the most middle I would get is, if you want to compete, then you all need to compete with men. Like, if you're a female and you start taking stuff, I guess you can go compete with the men. And if you're a man, you start taking estrogen, you still got to compete with the men. And if you aren't good enough to make the team, I guess you ain't playing. You know, that's what it is. If transitioning is more important to you than winning, then it is what it is. But you got to make a choice, and if that's a choice that you want, you got to live with it and be like. And if you say that's not fair, a lot of things that, well, I absolutely do think it's fair. You made a choice, but there's a lot of things in life that aren't fair to a lot of different people. What if you want to be a major basketball player and you don't make it to 5 feet? Maybe that's not fair, but that's life. That's life. Not everybody gets what they want. And I don't understand, as far as like where you pee in the bathroom and go to different locker rooms. Why is it that so many people want to cave to the tea and not consider how women feel in the situation? Hearing about how some of the female players were treated when Leah Thomas was on their team is horrific, and how much favor they obviously showed him over the girls when he didn't belong on their team in the first place. But they purposely uplifted him, accommodated him, and didn't care about their feelings and wanted them to shut up. They even told the girls that we can get you some help to basically make you okay. Like, they'll get them some therapy or something to help them kind of get with the program. So they wanted to do what they needed to do to make them comply. Now, they should have just like decided together not to compete or something. You know, they did. There was like a collective letter that some people wrote, said it was unfair for Leah to compete, and they're like, we accept you as a woman, or what. It was like, oh, that was a mistake. Because you know what William Thomas said on an interview? They're like, well, he said, if they accept me as a woman, then why don't they want me on their team? And I'm like, he's got a point. He's got a point. If he's a woman, why shouldn't he compete with them? Why should he compete with them? You got all these people insisting that trans women are women. So if you really believe that, and I don't think anyone really believes that, but if you're going to say that and you're going to play along, don't be surprised when they start saying, challenging you. Like, I thought you believed me. He made a really good point. So that's one of the reasons why you can't have a moderation with there's some things that are murky in life that you don't know, mysteries that we won't know till, the end of our life or something. We get to ask our creator. Men and women, they're two genders. We know that. We know that. So, sorry I took that long with that segment. By the way, I don't know if I'm still fuzzy, but I believe I can download the video and repost it, and it won't be fuzzy. So just FYI, just FYI. Um, Really quickly, I just wanted to mention, and I already mentioned at the top of the hour, but um, there was a murder of a GOP councilwoman, and she narrowly won her victory. Where I don't know how narrow it was, but it was an upset. I do not know, we don't know if what the motivation was, but it appears she was purposely targeted. But the police haven't mentioned a motivation. But this is from T-Post Millennial. New Jersey GOP councilwoman shot to death outside of Sayreville home. Police say she was intended target. This happened Wednesday evening. Is what to believe a targeted shooting. Eunice Dumfor, 30, was found dead in her white Nissan SUV after it crashed near her home in New Jersey. She's a Republican who shot multiple times and was pronounced dead at the scene by the police, according to the Daily Mail reports. One witness said that the gunman shot at her and drove off quickly from Camelot at LA Mirror apartment complex. To call the police was made at 7:22. This councilwoman and young mother is believed to be the intended target, though motive was not given by police. So she was, I believe, Nigerian. She was, someone who was involved in her church. She defeated a sitting Democrat in November 2021. She wasn't up for re-election until 2024. So this is a terrible, terrible thing. I hope it's a terrible thing, whatever reason they have. If it's politically motivated, and people are speculating, I don't know that. We don't know that. I'm not sure how much it'll be covered if that's the case. But if it is the case, I think we're really, really, really into some scary territory if people are willing to go up and just target people like this. But it is something that we've seen. The horrific example in the past couple of years was the baseball shooting where Scalise almost died. And I know people. There's some people from Michigan who were Congress people who were there at the time. So it's just really terrible to think about that people will be so pressed. But again, we don't know the motivation yet. But it's terrible that someone was willing to do that anyway. So keep her family or community in your prayers. Last thing I want to mention before I go, and I'm over on my time, and it did start late. I was scrolling yesterday through Facebook and I was on my Black Tea page, and I was scrolling through my feed, and I don't follow DC Comics or DC Entertainment, but there's other. I don't really follow. I think I'm like following 6 people on that page, but I have interacted with comic book content, but they show me more of that content than like political content, and I obviously run a political page and talk about this. Like, I know Zucker's listening, so it seems very weird that's what they're always pushing on me, and not like more stuff that are from right-leaning folks, but is what it is. So anyway, so there's this show Harley Quinn that they have, and Harley Quinn is in a relationship with Poison Ivy, and they're having a Valentine's Day special, and they say at the top, discretion is advised. I don't think this video is limited to like 18 and up or something. And it's coming on HBO Max, which you might say, oh, it's HBO. I think, but HBO, that's Max is just where they have all their stuff anyway, I think. So, but anyway, it's not, I don't think it's controlled by age, because I went on the page, not logged into anything, and you could still see the video. And the episode has some really racy stuff in it, and I just didn't think it was appropriate to have on people's feeds and not like be blocked out by age. And so in the trailer, Bane goes to the demon or it's Etrigan, and he's like, "You want an enlarged, you know, thing?" And they didn't answer. There was like bondage and beating kind of stuff going on, but with Harley and Ivy, they had sex in the trailer, and Ivy starts blooming. And then there's just like, I won't say those words, but there's an explosion of flower petals that just streams into the air and showers across Gotham. And then everyone just starts having sex in the street. And there's other stuff that happens, but I'm like, I don't think, I just didn't think that was appropriate to have in the feed for like everybody to see. So, and again, I can't say for sure that it wasn't marked for people under 18. But again, I did pull it up as in not being logged in, and I was able to see it. So if you're not logged in, they can't see your age. So they did say viewer discretion is advised, but a lot of people use Facebook who are not. I know it's like an older people app apparently. You know, younger kids are doing other apps. You know, Instagram or TikTok, and they say Facebook is for older people. But you never know who might be on, and I just did not think that was appropriate. And if you're asking why did I even look at it first, because I don't watch the show. I don't know. I do look at stuff that I don't actually watch sometimes, and it came across my feed. So I just want to let people know and talk about it, because I just did not think it was appropriate. You can make your own decisions. But I didn't think that was appropriate for like a general kind of public consumption out there. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different videos, different articles that I have. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com. Please check out different merch that I have. When you go to my website, the first thing that pops up is my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion. You guys can pre-order that on ebook. If you want paperback, you're going to have to wait a little bit for that pre-order, but I'm looking forward for that coming out, people being able to read that and enjoy. And please check out my other books and stuff. If you go to Black Tea News and hit the merchandise button, there's a banner that'll take you to my book website. I have 15 that are out right now, but I do have a historical fiction fantasy that takes place in the Civil War. Imagine like Civil War meets X-Men and stuff. So that's the book that a lot of people really, really like to get. And so it's, you know, Black History Month, so you might want to read something during that era about a cool leader, person, hero. So go ahead and check out my stuff. So God bless you guys. I will see you on Monday.